You are listening to the Baobab Project. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us under the Baobab tree from wherever you are in the world today. We are joining you from Halifax, Nova Scotia. We've got so much to explore, from culture to lifestyle to health, relationships, education, and so much more. Now over to our podcast host for today.
Thank you for joining me under the Baobab tree today. I'm your host, Randy Headley. Today's podcast is titled, That's Not My Name. Yes, I'm shouting, because that's what it looks like in a shouting voice. We will explore the pronunciation of the names of people of African descent, or those names that were given to people of African descent in the diaspora. I have a list of 12 names. I will spell each one before I say them. Then I will travel across campus to hear how my colleagues pronounce these names. So bear with me as I pronounce the names and spell these names for you. But I want us to have lots of fun. So the first name, it's spelled D''Hstiny, and I pronounce that as Destiny. The second is Mide. I pronounce that as Mide. The next is Maceo. I pronounce that name as Maceo. Third is Ijaw. I pronounce that as Ija. The next is Uwazuriki. Uwazuriki. I'll spell that again. Uwazuriki. Uwazuriki. Third is Eustace. I pronounce that as Eustace. The next is Moupaw, and I pronounce that as Mopa. And the next is Moussa and space, and then Ahmed. So I pronounce that as Musa Ahmed. The next is Al-Said, and I'll pronounce that as Al-Said. The next is Buyoya. I'll pronounce that as Buyuya or Buyoya. The next is Ndayikengureye. I'll spell that again. Ndayikengureye. I'll pronounce that as Ndikurami. The next name is spelled Ndakarutmana. I'll spell it again. Ndakarutmana. Ndakarutimanu. And the last name I have on the list is Shyraya, and that's pronounced Shyrara. Shyrara. So I'll leave the comfort of this recording studio now and head out into the public and have lots of fun. I want you to join me and listen to the names and the pronunciation and the effort people put into pronouncing these names. Again, we'll have lots of fun with this. See you on the road. All right, I'm in a colleague's office, and we're about to give it a shot. And again, she says, no laughing. And I agree, because the pronunciations that we hear here today might be same that she used at home or in her community, but it might not be the same pronunciation you use at your home. So here we go. Give it a shot. Let's see what you got.
Musa Ahmed, Uyoa, Shiraya, Al Said, Mopa, Eustace, Maseo, Made, Ajwa, Dahisni, Uwazaraki.
All right, we're going to leave it at that. I think those ones were really awesome. Thank you. Hey guys, I'm in another section of campus and I am here in this big hall meeting with a bunch of people. So we will just begin by pronouncing the names. I have two of my colleagues here and they will give it a shot. Go, guys.
Okay, you want to go first?
Oh, you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm going to try the first one. I'm going to guess it's Destiny. What do you think?
Maybe, yeah. Me too.
Mikhail,
Hijab,
Uazuriki,
Ustash,
Mupa,
Musa Ahmed,
Al Said,
Uyoya,
Dakara Utimana,
Shiraya.
All right, guys. Thanks so much.
I think we did all right.
Hey guys, I'm here with someone else who is willing to take the dive into pronouncing some of these names. Let's hear what he has to say.
Okay. Destiny, Mead, Mateo, Joe, Eustace, Uzak Yuriki, Mupa, Al Said, Oyoya, Shiraya, Musa Ahmed, Dakar Timana.
All right. Oh, thank you so much. Does anyone else want to give it a shot?
He's going
All right.
Not allowed to know beforehand the origins of them?
They're all African origin.
Okay.
Some from the Caribbean and some has Canadian context as well, but it's students of African ancestry.
Stini, Mide, Maseo, Ijao, Eustace, Uwazuriki, Mopa, Musa Ahmed, Al Said, Uyoya, Shiraya, Dakaru Timana.
Thank you so much. Hey guys, I'm here with another group of colleagues and we will give it another shot at these names. All right, here them go.
Destiny, Maseo, Maida, Ijao, Eustace, Wazuruki, Mopa, Musa Ahmed, El Said, Guyoya, Dakar Timano, Shiraya.
Okay. Destiny, Mateo, Mide, Ija, Eustace, Uwazuriki, Malta, Musa Ahmed, Al Said, Uria, Mondokar Timano, Shiraya.
All right, thank you guys. That was awesome. Hey guys, I'm here again with another group of friends and colleagues who will pronounce some of the names that we have here. So go for it, guys.
I think I see Mopa. Mopa is the word. And
Maceo,
okay, Al Said. Oh, is that correct?
Good seeing you, man.
Uyoya,
And this is Mide.
Uwazuriki,
Oh, wow. Musa Ahmed. Musa.
Ndakaru Timana,
That end.
And Sharia.
Eustace.
Eustace? Is Eustace? I think this will be Ijao.
Me too. Ijao.
Randy? I think that's all we can.
All right, guys. Thank
Destiny.
All right, thanks, guys. That was awesome. Hi guys, that was a lot of fun in that last building that I went through. I'm in another building now. I'm here with another colleague who is going to give a shot at the names that we have listed on the paper. All right, here we go.
All right, I'm gonna go with Eustace for one of the names, Makeo, Mide, Uwazurki, Musa Ahmed, Al Said, Buyoya, and Dakaradumimana, Shairaya, Destiny, Iwa, and Mupa. I think I hit them all.
All right, awesome. I think you got them all too. Thanks. Hi again. We had so much fun asking my fellow colleagues about their experiences with names. I'm here in the dean's office, and it's just important to understand at this level in administration, the deans would deal directly with a lot of students, and I kind of figured that they'll have some kind of difficulties experience with some of the names that they encounter on a regular basis. I'll ask this dean to pronounce some of the names in a bit, but also I'd like to find out a little bit more about our experiences with names. There's some difficulties, so why don't we just jump right into it? You have seen a few of these names that I've placed before you. How difficult it is at first glance, how difficult it is to pronounce some of these names?
Oh, some of them are incredibly kind of challenging looking, and they just look very unusual to my Anglo-Saxon, my Anglophone eye and ear. So
Yeah, but in the past, have you used any strategies to help you overcome, and I'll say fear? You see these names and you look at someone and you say, okay, I see your name, I want to talk to you. What do I say? What methods have you used in the past?
I think I'm quite an honest person by well, I shouldn't say I'm quite an honest person. I think most people are, but I'm sort of to the point. So I will say I probably need some help pronouncing your name. Can you help me? And people generally are happy to do that. Always, I've never had anybody say no. And I think just they appreciate the effort really. So I always try to make the effort, but I'm very honest that I might mess it up the first few times.
All right, so let me be very honest with you right now. These names that are placed before you, I won't help you pronouncing them. This is all you. You have to do it on your own. So how about we give it a shot? Then you can call them in any order.
And I have to do all of them, Randy?
No, you don't. Just say the ones you want to.
Okay, I'm going to give it a go, starting at the top. Destiny, Macheo, Mide, Uwazuriki, Ija, Eustace, Mupa, Al Said, Musa Ahmed, Buyoya, Shairea, and I'm saving the best one for last. Oh dear. And Dakarutimana. And Daki Rutimama.
All right. Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer. How did I do, teacher?
Well, I can't tell you the answer, as I said. You have to listen to the podcast to get the answer. So, was this relieving to get these names out? How did you feel at the end of calling these names?
Well, I'm pleased that I tried.
Yeah.
I hope that I didn't offend. And I'm really keen to learn how to improve them.
All right, thank you. And I'm sure that our other colleagues will probably say similar things. And I really appreciate your contribution today.
It's a pleasure. Can't wait to hear the podcast.
Again, I'm meeting with a faculty member in the Faculty of Education, and we are going to just discuss further some of the problems that they'll encounter in the classroom while just pronouncing these names. And I have to confess that some of these names are very difficult to say because it's not something that we do on a regular basis. Is this something that you encounter as well?
Yes, first day of class, not only the first day of class, even the succeeding classes.
Yeah.
You forget the name and sometimes you mispronounce the names over and over again.
Yeah, yeah. So when you encounter these kinds of problems of not being able to remember the names, especially if a name doesn't pronounce in the way that it's spelled, like it has a different phonetics, what do you do when you encounter these names that you can't say?
Generally, I ask the student
Yeah.
to do it for me. I'll ask them to pronounce their names the way they wanted me to pronounce their names. But even if they do that correctly, my way of saying that might be still different.
Yeah.
But I tell them that I might commit a mistake,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's not a matter of like disrespecting you. It's only like I'm just going through the process and different kinds of context and culture.
Yeah, exactly. And I had this thought this morning that everyone think that their names is easy. How about you? Do you think your name is easy?
Fairly enough, my name it sounds that's biased as well because
Yeah.
you say my name is easy because it sounds like Americans
Yeah.
or Canadian name, so it's still biased, right?
Yeah,
Generally, it's easy.
is easy, exactly. And we often now ask ourselves, why is my name spelled like, for instance, my name is Randy, Randy, and people still get it wrong. And I ask myself, why is it so hard for someone to get my name correct? And I'm sure every name on that list is asking themselves the same questions. Um, so this is not something that is common to just the names outside of our context. There are names within our context that are difficult to pronounce as well, and we are learning, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So how about you give a shot at this list and see what names you can pronounce here?
I can go through the rest. All of these. Should I?
Yeah, yeah,
The Hisni,
yeah.
Mide, Masio, Ijao, Uwazuriki, Eustache, Mopa, Mosa Ahmed, Alsed, Buyoya, Nadakarutimana, Shai Ryan.
All right. How confident are you that you got all right?
Between 1 to 10, I think it's just between 4 to 6.
Okay.
Or much lesser.
Come on, Professor, you're feeling yourself.
Yeah.
How difficult is it to call these names?
It's difficult in a way that they're new to me.
Yeah.
And even if I can read the letters, there's a different pronunciation in the context of your culture and your country and your history.
Awesome. This is some very good points. I really appreciate your contribution here. You'll get to hear the pronunciation of these names when the podcast is aired. So thank you again.
Thank you too, Randy.
All right, bye. Hey guys, I have had so much fun already today, and I am out in EMF, I think. Yes, the library where the students are, and I'm meeting with a student. She already has the list of names, that lovely list, and I'm going to ask her just to take a look at the list and just one glance, and then tell me at a glance, would those names be something that you're familiar with?
Looking at the list, there's 2 names where I actually know the people, but the other ones, no, I don't know.
So those names are kind of difficult to you. So when you look at those names, do you think they are difficult to pronounce?
Yes.
What makes them so difficult?
I think it's just something I've never seen before. Yeah.
Yeah. So in your classroom, we let's establish that you don't have to call those names. It is the professor's duty to know these names to interact with the students. If you see these names in your classroom, these students in the classroom, what attempts would you make to communicate with them if you can't pronounce their names?
I think I would just ask them to say it quite slowly, just because I would want to get their name right. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you consider your name difficult to pronounce?
No.
Me too. My name is Randy, and I can't believe that some people get it wrong. Randy.
Yeah,
And some people get it wrong.
that's not
But
that difficult.
I know, but I still need to put in the context that, some people assume that I'm coming from a different context. And as such, they put on different letters on my name or, just to think that, okay, it's spelled that way, but it's really not pronounced that way.
Yeah.
Right? So similarly, these names that we're looking at, if you ask every person if their names are difficult to pronounce, they'll say absolutely not, because that's all they knew, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, are you willing to give it a shot and see if you can call them?
Sure. Should I just pick anyone?
You can pick anyone. I would love if you can call all the names,
All
but
the names? Okay.
pick what you like.
Yeah, I hope. Yeah. Dehistony, Matseo, Mide, EJ, Eustasi, Uwazuriki. I really I think I'm saying them all wrong. Pa, Al Zaid, Buyoya, Musa Ahmed, Ndakarutimana, and Shariah.
That was awesome. How did you feel?
I don't know. I probably messed it up.
All right, I'm your professor today. Out of a scale of 1 to 10, how many marks do you think you should get?
Maybe like a 7?
A 7? Oh my gosh, I like that. I asked a professor the same question just now, and he said he'll take a 4 or a 5.
Yes.
So that professor failed themselves. I hope they passed you. We will hear the truth of this, but I think in the end, it is kind of unique to see all of these names on one page. You will never or necessarily won't ever see all of these students in your classroom. So go with confidence in knowing that you will learn the names of a few new students. Maybe we can figure out some methods afterwards of how to interact with students with different names. How do you think?
I think that would be good, yeah.
Awesome. So thank you for participating here.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys, I'm in another building now. I'm here with another colleague, and again, same questions. I'll ask them how to pronounce these names that I have on the list. But before I begin, I'll just ask you, at first glance, you're looking at these names right now. How difficult are they to pronounce?
Well, some of them I think I might be able to pronounce. A couple look familiar. However, there are a few that I am going to struggle with. But looking forward to trying them and looking forward to even more you teaching me how to pronounce them after I do it incorrectly.
I'll be honest with you, I am not going to tell you the answer. You have to listen to the podcast, right?
Okay.
But do you ever encounter these names on a regular basis?
Well, not these names specifically, but I would say, Randy, that I do encounter daily names that I am unsure of.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see students from different nationalities, not just the Black student population on campus.
Okay.
And their names are also challenging. And there are a lot of, consonants and different letter sounds that I'm not sure how to pronounce. In English language, we don't have to do it, but I do encounter some challenging names.
What do you do when you encounter these names?
I think I've learned over the years that the best thing to do is students appreciate honesty, and I think students appreciate vulnerability, and then I think they appreciate that I take the effort to try and say it correctly instead of being ignorant and using my Nova Scotia Canadian white
Yeah,
accent. And
yeah.
so what I do is I ask them to teach me how to pronounce it.
Yeah, and I remember as an international student as well, and let me just back up a little bit. Everyone thinks that their name is simple, right? But I have encountered areas where people have said my name wrong, spelt my name wrong, and I'll spell it for you: Randy, Randy, and I'll say in any context that's simple. Likewise, these students, the names that we're looking at, if you ask them whether their names are simple, the obvious answer will be yes.
Of course.
Right. I think when I came as an international student, I struggled with the fact that people couldn't say my name correctly, and often having to say it over and over and over. That as well is another difficult task to do. How do you, and I know there's no term for this, but how do you deal with a student who have been asked 200 times already for the day, how do you say your name?
Yeah. How do I deal with that? So first off, I can't put myself in that position. I don't know what it's like to be asked 200 times.
Yeah.
So I think I have to empathize with students and realize that it is, they've been asked so many times how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
And then I just try to be honest and say, I really believe, Randy, that to make someone feel welcome and to make someone feel comfortable, I want to be able to say their name, right? I find that, students whose names are different or are not common, they are already potentially being seen as different because their names are hard to pronounce, right?
Exactly.
And so if it's being mispronounced, or if, in some instances students are saying, oh, just call me by my English name, whatever.
Yeah.
I feel that segregates them, makes them a little bit of an outsider, makes them feel less welcome. So I try to explain to students that, if you're patient with me, I promise you I'm doing this and this is why, it's coming from a place of caring and compassion.
Yeah, very good point. And I'm going to just mention this Chinese proverbs that says the beginning of wisdom is to call things by its right name. Right. So, this is in this context, putting that effort into calling someone by their right name shows wisdom. And I think a lot of people appreciate that. A lot of students would appreciate that. I think I got angry one time and I said to my colleagues, the next time you ask me where I'm from or how to spell my name, I'm going to plaster it on my forehead so you stop asking. Right. But, I think students feel that way in the classroom, but we need to be so much more patient with ourselves to wait and learn. We try to learn all of these names on the first day of class.
So you make me think of something interesting, Randy. I've never thought of this before until now. So again, thinking about, again, in this case, students who are coming to the Mount, whether they're from abroad or they're from, just another province perhaps, or I just wonder, so if we're talking about, these names perhaps being challenging for me to pronounce, flip it. So you, as an international student who came to Canada.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, one, were some of the names of your professors and staff, Canadians, were they difficult to pronounce? And then also, too, not being able to pronounce them maybe made you feel, again, a bit outside,
Exactly. Well, it's definitely that's a very good point, because that would alienate a student if you can't approach a professor or call them by their names. Hence, you would find a student saying Mr. Randy as opposed to Mr. Headley, because Headley might be more difficult to pronounce. They'll say the name that is more most easiest to pronounce, and they will put the respect or seniority in front of it. That angers a lot of our professors and people in the community. But understanding that just as difficult it is for you to pronounce my name, it's difficult for me to pronounce your name.
Right, and culturally too in Canada, right? So it could be that, culturally too, for for me, for example,
Yeah.
you know, I was brought up in an education system where it's okay to approach your teacher. It's okay
Yeah.
to disagree with your instructors. You know,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is there. But, you know, oftentimes some students come from places where you don't approach a professor.
Exactly.
You don't ask for help.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in Canada, when you're expected at the Mount, you're expected to approach someone and ask for help. So that vulnerability again.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you can't say their name properly, or you're worried about saying their name
Yeah.
properly.
I kind of sense that for a student coming from an international context, the professor is seen as the ones in authority in
Yeah,
the classroom.
absolutely.
So as such, it is important for them to know that professor's name, and they will do whatever it takes to learn that authority's name because they see that as the person they'll have to communicate with no
Yes.
matter what. Not so much for their fellow classmates. So I am not worried about the communication with the professor, but when they have to interact with their fellow classmates whom they might not be able to say their names correctly, then that would exclude them even further from group setting
That's
or
right.
from sharing of information
Yeah.
and those kinds of things. So I like your points. They're really interesting. Well, let's take a look at these names, see how you do, and then I'll ask you what your scores are at the end.
Oh,
How about
gosh.
that?
I'm going to apologize first. Okay. I'm just going to kind of.
Yeah, you choose which ones you want to say. You can say them all or say them one.
Do them all.
All right.
I think Destiny, Maseo, Mide. I don't know if that's Ija or Ija. Eustace, Uwazuriki, Musa Ahmed or Ahmed, Mupa, Al Said, Sharaya, Buyoya. The double consonants right there. ND. Hang on, just give me a sec. Nadakuru. Oh, I'm sorry. This one is. I'm so sorry.
You're gonna give up on that one?
No.
Just just a shortened format if you have to.
Karutimana. Na Karutimana.
All right. So how did you think you do overall?
I'm not sure. A few of the names I think I did okay. A couple I think I did okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I massacred another
All
several.
right. I really appreciate this conversation. There were so many insightful portions to the conversation that I wish that many of our colleagues would listen to and learn strategies, learn fears, learn how to overcome some of the fears,
Yes.
and also learn what the other side experiences as well. So I really appreciate this conversation.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Hey guys, I'm again here meeting with another colleague, and we are going to jump right into just looking at these names again. And I'm so happy that folks were excited to meet with me today. And I know there are many of you listening that would be interested in pronouncing some of these names. And just remind you that we're on the Baobab tree, and this is the podcast that says that's not my name. Yes, I'm shouting. And here with my colleague, I'll ask her a few questions, and then we will just dig into some of the names. So, in your job, do you ever encounter any of these names?
Yeah, certainly. So my job is student facing, so I definitely do recognize some of these types of names that I probably would have had to struggle to ask the student how to say for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you ask a student how to say your name, do you ever encounter situations where you have to ask them more than once to say their names?
Yeah, I have definitely had to ask for clarification
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you feel anyway, like, do you feel bad about asking them? How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I always feel a little bit guilty of
Yeah.
not being able to know how to correctly pronounce their name. At the same time, even if I'm a little bit unsure, if I think I know how to say it, I usually still ask them because I
Yeah.
don't want to mispronounce it, and I think it's critical for me to be able to correctly pronounce their name for them. So
Yeah.
I always ask for clarification if I'm not sure.
Yeah. Now, this is a very nice question.
Mhm.
Just picture you saying someone's name correctly for the first time.
Mhm.
What do you see on their face, and what are their reactions like?
They typically are surprised. Like
Yeah.
if it's a name that's typically mispronounced by other people, and if you can say it right off the bat,
Yeah.
yeah, they do look a little bit surprised, but they're always very happy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yes.
And exactly, it was like I've encountered this quite often, where people would be like, "My gosh, you said my name exactly like they would say it back home."
Yeah.
Right? And they're super excited. And then on the flip side, when you say someone's name incorrectly after they've told you more than once,
Mhm.
that often it feels on the person who is saying the name, it often feel you often feel so bad. You feel as though you've done something wrong. So this podcast is just to help you to know that it's okay. You won't always get it right on the first go, just like you won't get these names right on
Yeah.
the first go.
Try my
But
best.
what I'm hoping though is that people would have this get into this comfort zone where we feel confident enough to ask someone using whatever method it is how to say your name or what shall I call you
Mhm.
without feeling as though they don't have all of the requirements, including the language, the tone, the accent, and those kinds of things. It's just a matter of attempting, right? Right, just
For sure.
putting in the effort to learn the person's name.
Yeah.
So here we go. You have this list in front of you.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna let you choose which ones you want to call, and
Okay.
you call them in any order.
Sure.
Well, most people say that if you put it all in front of me, I'll call them all. So you can do that if you like.
Sure, yeah, I can. I can start at the top and work my way down, I guess, in my so the first one, what kind of throws me for a loop in this one is
Yeah.
the apostrophe. So
Yeah.
typically in English, that would kind of be almost like a little bit of a pause. So I guess if I were to see this with no background knowledge, I'd say dehistony.
Okay.
Do you want me to just keep going?
Oh yeah,
All of
keep
them?
going.
Okay. Okay. Are you gonna tell me if they're right or not?
No, I am
No?
not.
Okay. Okay. All right. So then the next one on the list, when I read it, to me, it looks like mind. I could also see maybe like need, like the I sounding like an E. Then moving on down, and maybe this is because I'm Canadian, so I'm familiar with like French.
Yeah.
To me, it kind of looks like it would have a French origin, like Masio.
Okay.
Maceo. This one, I and J together, that's a new one for an English speaker. I mean, I would see that in English and say Ija. I'm sure that's incorrect. Or maybe Ija. That sounds,
That sounds good.
yeah, I don't know.
Tomato,
It's a
tomato.
nice name. And then again, the U and the W and the Z is, as an English speaker, definitely throws me off. So I'm so sorry if this is your name. I'd say Uwizer Ike. Uwizer Ike. That's it, I guess.
All right.
Then moving on. Eustace.
Okay.
Mupa. Mupa.
Okay.
Musa Ahmed. I feel pretty confident with that one, so I hope it's right.
For your sake, I hope it's right.
I hope it's right. And Al-Saidi.
Okay.
Again, I hope it's right. I feel like I'm confident in that one. Um, Bioia? That's definitely wrong. Bioia? You can tell I'm leaving this one for
Okay,
last.
that's all right.
The most intimidating. Now this one, so for me, I would say SYH as shy, as in like Shira, but it might be an E pronunciation, maybe like Shiraya, Shiraya,
All right.
around there.
Yeah, so
And yeah, the one that I said I'm leaving for last that's daunting was the silent N, and it's of course very long and a lot of different syllables. So, assuming that the N is perhaps something you say and it's not silent, I would say Ndakar Ndakaritmana? Ndakaritemana?
yeah, so if you are in a classroom with these students, not as the professor, as a student, so they are your colleagues, and you had to, and the professor says, "Oh, form groups, guys," and you see these names on the list, and then you see the names that you're more comfortable with, like Randy.
Yes.
Would you go for one of these names or a Randy, and why?
Well, I don't think I would let what I would deem harder to pronounce name for me
Yeah,
hold me back from choosing that person to be in my group.
yeah.
And that's mostly because when I did do my undergraduate degree, the university that I went to was it had a lot of different nationalities, like I think 40 or so different countries that international students came from.
Yeah.
So it was very commonplace to have many different cultures in the classroom.
Yeah.
So for me
Okay.
personally, I wouldn't have let it hold me back, but I could see how other people may be intimidated by that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, I know I'm looking at it from this perspective now, but in my undergraduate, I would probably go after someone with a simple name like Randy because I can easily introduce myself and say, "Hey, I'm Randy. How are you? I see we have similar names." Because we're taught that our first impression counts, and you don't want to start the conversation by not knowing the people that you're communicating with.
Right.
But I've grown wiser, and I think over time our society has as well, whereby we are able to further communicate and understand the context in which people are coming from, but also understanding that they need to learn our names, which aren't common to them, right? And it's like equally difficult for them to learn our names, just as we are trying to learn their names. So I think when we approach these situations, we must then assume that that student is having the same experience I am having, right? So don't let the names be daunting. So I think, maybe we can form a pact today and say, look, we will introduce ourselves first and say, "Hey, welcome, I am Randy," and hope that they will then say their names in a way that we can understand and be able to pronounce. All right, so I hope these names didn't throw you off or throw you for the loop, and I hope you had fun pronouncing them. How did you think you do? You did.
I mean, like I said, some of them I felt kind of confident in. The large majority, not so much.
Yeah.
I think maybe I did okay.
All right. So, well, thank you for being on the Baobab Tree with me. And we have had a really good discussion. And we will hear what your results will be once this podcast is launched. Thank you again. Okay, guys, I'm meeting with another colleague here. We're back in Seaton. My gosh, I've traveled most of campus already. And, I've brought so many people onto the Bobob tree, and we're still exploring. That's not my name. Trying to understand why folks have some difficulties in pronouncing these names and trying to see how my colleagues say these names and what methods they've used to help them pronounce these names. I think it's so important for us to when we see these names to try at least to pronounce them right. Don't you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what have you used in the past to help you pronounce these names, the names that are difficult?
Yeah, some strategies that I've used in the past is, well, sounding out the way that I think the name is spelled and sounding it out, but also listening to others pronounce the names. And
Yeah.
sometimes I even ask about pronunciation if I'm unsure.
No, absolutely. So we are, I'll say, forward-facing staff. We meet a lot of students. When you meet a student with one of these names on your list, what do you do?
Well, I welcome every student into my office,
Yeah.
and if I am uncertain about the pronunciation of a name, I will politely ask if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and just to make sure, because I do want people to feel like I'm putting in an effort to pronounce the name properly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are some names that are very difficult to say if you're coming from a different context. Like, for instance, Randy. I thought that that was the simplest name to say. It's mine, and I've been saying it since I was like 2 or something like that. But I've learned it all of my life. For me, it's the simplest thing. And I think all of those students on the list are feeling the same way. Has anyone ever found your name to be difficult?
Yeah, absolutely. Throughout my whole life, both my first name and my last name
Yeah.
have been either misspelled or
Yeah.
mispronounced.
Yeah.
So definitely have had that experience.
And your name is simple.
Yeah,
Right?
for some people.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Every letter is like enunciated really well in your name. So it's very simple. For all of these names that are on this list, the students would look at us and say, my name is simple. Right? Similarly, we think our name is simple.
Yes.
Right? Do you ever take into consideration that the difficulties you have in pronouncing these names, that the student that is meeting with you is having the same problem pronouncing the name?
Pronouncing my name?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have thought about that before, but sometimes I don't always think about that. But I'm
Yeah.
sure that's the case.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we don't always tend to think about the
Yeah.
experience of the students who are meeting with us. So
Yeah. And I think, many times we shine that light on that student. We want to be so much more welcoming. We want to be so much more in the know, and we want to be that pedestal that the student sees us to be. Because let's face it, a lot of international students, more specifically, would say, okay, they're coming to our offices, and we are in that place of authority. So they see it as onus on them to know our names and to teach us their names to the best of their abilities.
right.
And if we get their names wrong, they'll say, oh, it's okay, just call me XYZ. But have you ever considered that we don't want to be called, like, for me, I don't want to be called Randolph. I don't know how people get Randolph from Randy.
Right.
Right. But I don't want to be called something else. I want to be called the name that was given to me.
Yes.
Right.
That's a really good point, Randy.
Yeah, and so I think it, just as equally as it is important for us to learn that student name, it is for them to learn our names. And one of the methods I came up with just recently, and thanks to this podcast, and just to remind our audience, we are under the Bobob tree still, and we are exploring That's Not My Name. That's the name of the podcast. So this podcast has taught me one thing, is that we introduce ourselves, and then we look at the faces of the person that we're meeting with to see if they captured our names correctly. And maybe it's important for us to again to say it twice so that they get it. What I've learned since doing this podcast as well is that by doing so, you gave the authority to that person now to say their names and maybe say it twice so you can capture an essence of what they're really saying without having to say, can you say that again? Can you say that again? Can you give me a shortened form? Or can I call you this? Right?
Right.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think your points are really important, and you know, I that they're even changing. And now, just having this conversation
Yeah.
is going to, you know, potentially change how I'm welcoming students in,
Yeah.
and not taking for granted that everybody knows my name and its
Yeah.
pronunciation, and to really try and put myself in other shoes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the other things that I found too is that, and this happens with many international students, they will say things like, good afternoon, Mr. Randy. But in the Western context, you would say Mr. Headley,
Yes.
right? But Randy is easier to pronounce.
Yes.
So they'll say Mr. Randy, right? If they can pronounce Headley, then they will then go on and say, good afternoon, Mr. Headley, right?
Right.
And I think that many of my colleagues, they tend to get upset without understanding where the student is coming from and the context in which they're coming from. They're upset that someone would call them Mr. or Mrs. and put their first name because that's not the norm. So I'm hoping that this podcast would have cleared some of that up, providing context as to why some students would call you Professor first name or Mr. first name, as opposed to Professor last name, or Mrs. last name. Um, so names are going to be inherently difficult to say and pronounce if you're coming from outside of the context. So let's see how you do with these names that are placed before you.
Okay.
In any order, as many as you'd like to say.
Okay, well, I'll give them a try. Destiny, Ija, Mupa, Alsaid, Shiria, Maceo, Eustace, Bioya, Mead, or Maid, Musa Ahmed,
Yeah.
Uwa Zerki.
Are we getting to the tough ones now?
Yeah, we're getting to tougher ones, and I think I'll stop there.
Well,
I could give this last one a try.
well, you know what? You're going to get it wrong, right?
Yes.
All right, let's see how
Okay.
wrong you get it.
Okay, sounds good. Dakaru Timana.
Perfect. You know, so how do you feel looking at all of these names?
Well, I think these names are beautiful.
Yeah.
I also feel that I want to do a good job
Yeah.
pronouncing them.
Yeah.
And so I was a bit nervous in case I messed up, but also know that these names belong to people who are wonderful people,
Yeah.
and so it's really important to get them right. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think in most contexts, you will not have to call all of these names, unless, of course, you're the dean and you have to, graduation, and all of these students are there. So, do you have any other methods that you would use to help with pronouncing names, besides asking? And I'm just thinking of you're meeting with a student for the first time, and you have the appointment booked, and you want to address them on the phone or you want to address them beforehand. What methods would you try or would you use?
Yeah, I mean, I think after our conversation, it's sort of changing the way I think about this because, I could do some preliminary research, perhaps even, an internet search of a name and a
Yeah.
pronunciation. Instead of putting the burden on somebody to tell me how to
Yeah.
pronounce the name,
Yeah.
I could look for ways that it has been pronounced.
Yeah.
So there are lots of resources out there.
Yeah.
So I think I could do a little bit more
Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
look into other instances where this name is being pronounced.
Yeah, and I think another good example that I have used in the past is I've reached out to a Chinese student and say, how do you say this name correctly?
Yes.
When I was going to meet with a Chinese student, another Chinese student,
Yes.
and we can utilize the resources around us, our colleagues who are more familiar with the names. I think that's another wealth of resource that we often ignore.
Great idea. Great
So
suggestion.
I would suggest that we do that. And don't feel as if you are, some people say, I feel stupid not knowing how to say these names. I think you'd look more stupid if you end up in front of someone and then you say Randai, and you're confident in Randai when my name is Randy.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think, as an added resources, just utilize the people around us because of our colleagues have traveled. They may have encountered the name before,
Yes.
and they're definitely resourceful and able to help us out.
Yeah, I love that suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you so much. This has been really good, and I love our discussion.
Yes.
And
me too.
I can't wait to see what it will all look like when we put it together.
Me too. I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Randy.
you. Hey guys, I'm here again in another office, and man, this has been fun today. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to hear the final package. We're sitting under the baobab tree, and I'm listening to three of my colleagues again in oh my gosh, where am I? Yes, Seaton. We're just going to call the names, but before we do that, you guys have had a look at the names that I've provided. How is it? Does it look quite easy?
Some of them look easy, but there are a couple that look a little challenging.
Definitely challenging.
Yeah, well, just consider that when a student sees your name on the paper, they say, what is this? Right? And look, I consider my name to be so easy. Randy. Everybody knows that's Randy, but I've been called everything under the sun. Some I don't care to pronounce here, but Randai is the weirdest one. Right, and I think you all know how easy your name is, right? You all agree that your name is easy to pronounce? Yeah? No. Yeah.
Mine apparently is not.
All right. So, but it is as difficult for us as the person that we're meeting. And so today, what we'll try to do is just look at these names and put ourselves in the shoe of those we are meeting with, and experience some of what they experience on a given day. And afterwards, I'll just ask you a couple more questions. And if you have questions, sure, I'll be able to answer some. The only one I won't answer is, what's the correct pronunciation? You have to listen to the podcast for that one. Okay. All right. So you guys can jump right in and start saying some of the names. How about this?
Destiny.
Al Said.
Shiraya.
Uyoya.
Musa Ahmed.
Yeah.
Midi.
Ija.
Mupa.
Eustace.
Uwazuriki.
That Dakaritima. that one was butchered.
Do you think she pronounced that one correctly? You give that one a shot.
She gave it her best shot.
All right. You can do better. Let's hear it.
Dakaru Tumana. No. Dakar or Tumana.
All right. How about you?
You want me to try?
Well, you can try anyone else that they've tried as well.
Dakarutamana.
Yeah.
All right. So if we were marking you out of 10 and you put all your scores together, how well did you think you all did?
Not as well
Group
as
assignment.
we should have.
Group assignment.
40%, 4 out of 10.
Say five.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you the answer later on once you listen to the podcast. But just in doing this, in pronouncing these names, you can see how difficult it is for students to say our own names. What strategies have you used in the past to help you prepare for a student that is coming with a name that is unfamiliar to you?
Sometimes I will Google it and ask it to sound it out for me, and it will. Sometimes it helps.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does not.
Google as well in advance, and then asking for confirmation when I meet with a student.
Okay, that's awesome.
I would just ask.
Yeah. Yeah, I think many of my colleagues, our colleagues, have said that they would just ask the student when they show up, and sometimes that is quite difficult to do because you look at some of the simple names and you say, "Man, that should be easy." And for instance, I won't even consider that someone will get my name wrong. So one of the methods I use is introducing myself as opposed to waiting for them to introduce themselves, and then I have to say, "Can you say your name again?" I would say my name very slowly in a tone that they would then be able to replicate. And if I look at their face and it says that, okay, they were going to say Randi instead of Randy, then I'll say my name again just to reconfirm what my name is, so they understand exactly that, okay, this is his name. Yes, he didn't say Randi, he said Randy. And that student would then replicate and do the same thing. They'll say most often they'll say their names twice, right? And they'll say it in that same slow tone that I have used. So I found that to be a good strategy. Any other suggestions? No?
No.
All right. So I want to thank you guys. This has been really awesome. I think you did really well. I wouldn't tell you your score, but you did really well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm in the McCain building today and I'm meeting with one of my colleagues, and we are getting right back into looking at some of these names on the paper. I'm going to ask my colleague to just look at those names and how difficult are they to pronounce?
Some of them I am wondering about. Others, I think I know. We will test them.
Yeah. Did you have any strategies for calling these names? Like before, at a glance, you're looking at them. Are you thinking of any strategies in order to pronounce these names?
I am. I'm actually thinking of a couple of things. The times when I've met with students and I do give a first try and then I say, "Help me pronounce your name." I actually say the sentence.
Yeah.
And then the student will say their name and then I will repeat and I ask them to say it again and then I repeat.
Yeah.
And then my strategy is for me to repeat the name again some moments later in the conversation to help me retain.
That is an awesome strategy. I think I heard of that strategy a little while. I think it's something that is used in business quite often when you're building connections and you are trying to create rapport and those kinds of things. But it's a really good strategy in helping to remember the names that you've just learned. Have you ever encountered a situation whereby there's a student who you're going to meet and the name is difficult to pronounce or say, and and you haven't had a chance to meet with them just yet to ask them what the name is? Have you had that encounter and not knowing what to say, and what have you done?
Oh, that's such a good question. Yes, I definitely have. If I'm confident to make an attempt,
Yeah.
then I will make that attempt. But I
Yeah.
do follow it up with, I'm not sure I have pronounced that. Can you help me?
Yeah.
Because it's important to get it right.
Absolutely.
And I say that right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had quoted this Proverbs earlier, Chinese Proverbs. And for the listeners, I just want to let you know that you're sitting under the baobab tree with us. And this podcast is That's Not My Name. I'm here with a colleague in the McCain building, and you know that I've been traveling throughout campus, so I'll repeat myself several times, so bear with me. So this Chinese Proverbs I've quoted earlier is, it says, the beginning of wisdom is to call things by its right name, right? And I think that's so important. It shows wisdom when you recognize that an apple is an apple and not call it something else because you don't know how to say apple, right? Similarly, the names that we are given, I thought about this today, how important it is for us to call a person by their names, right? I've recognized that my name is very, very easy to pronounce. It's spelled Randy. It says Randy, and I've always known it's simple to say. How about you? You don't have to spell your name or say your name, but do you think yours is easy?
Well, surprisingly, many people don't know how to pronounce or mispronounce it or take it for a different name.
Yeah.
Ironically enough. So
Yeah.
so I think that's part of the reason why I have made more effort in myself in learning. And it's always learning, it's always practicing.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I wanted to be with you for this interview, is
Yeah.
because it's okay for me to be in a vulnerable place to say, I am practicing, I
Yeah.
will learn.
Yeah.
And that's, that's how I will commit this to memory and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
then also use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like, for me, it's like learning a language. So I
Yeah.
know two languages.
Yeah.
Students and faculty and staff here know many more. I
Yeah.
know. But for me, I compare it to how have I learned another language and practiced and practiced and practiced. And it's lifelong.
Yeah, exactly. So this thought came to me this weekend, and you can tell me if you've heard this before. Someone says, "You have such a beautiful name." Have you heard that before?
Yes.
What did you think about that when someone said, "You have such a beautiful name"?
I think it's a compliment.
Yeah, I did a podcast just recently, and it's something similar. And here is where I got that quote from, because there's this people would say, "You have beautiful hair," right? And so I thought of, yeah, people say you have beautiful hair, and they say you have beautiful name. You have a beautiful name. But when you say you have beautiful hair, are you saying all the other hairs are not beautiful? Right. So when you say to someone, you have a beautiful name, are we saying then, are all the other names are not beautiful? And then, I'm sure I have done this before. I said to someone, which, it's obvious that a name that it's not common to me, and it just has this beautiful flow to it. And I say, you have a beautiful name. Then I thought to myself, that person's parents spent a lot of time and effort, just as everyone else's parents does, to create this beautiful name to match that child that they have, and realize that all of the names are beautiful. Right? You could say that. And I know you're going to change your mind very soon when you're asked to call these names on the list. But for now, let's agree that all names are beautiful, right? Um, I think, you know what, let's just jump right into the difficult part, and then we can talk a little bit later about how difficult it was for you to say these names on the list. So, how about you just give it a shot? Call the names in any order. You can just call one or all, how many you choose to call.
Okay, I'll start. I'll read them all because
Okay.
I want to learn. So, Tihastini, Mida, Maseo, Iya, Yowazi Curry. No, I'll try that again.
Yeah.
Yorazuriki, Eustace,
Mhm.
Mupa, Musa Ahmed, Al Sayed, Buyoya, Buyoya, Shairea, Dakarut Imana,
All right. Can you try this one again for me?
Buyoya.
Buyoya. All right, awesome. How difficult is this to pronounce these names?
I will say difficult because I think that's my intention is, am I saying it properly? And
Yeah,
then can I hear someone say it properly so then I can repeat?
yeah. So I can guarantee that under no circumstances would you have all of these folks walking into your office at the same time.
Well, maybe.
Because that would be a horrible day, right? If you're having a conversation and you have all of these names show up, what would you do if this happens to you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I find that for me, when my own name is mispronounced,
Yeah,
but I'm in a group, I myself rarely will correct somebody in a group setting.
yeah, okay.
On occasion, yes, but very
Mm,
rare. It is more likely for me to talk to the person afterward and
yeah.
tell them how to pronounce my name.
I think everyone does that. I mean, like, for instance, if someone sends me an email and they spell my name Randi, I will forgo that first error and see it as an error. But if the next email comes with Randi, I will say, hey, it's Randy. Right? So similarly, in that group setting, you gave people the opportunity to learn that that is a mistake without calling them out in public, right? And then you can correct them at a later point. But the reason why I ask you that question, because this has happened to me before, whereby I'm in a context where there's so many names that I can't pronounce, and I end up picking on the one name that I can say, right? I would refer to that one person for every example. If I'm looking for an answer, I'll call on that person first. So I think it's just in our nature to just to refer to the simplest, to make things simple for ourselves, is to refer to the things that we are more familiar with. Similarly, in a context where there are all of these names existing, we would then say, well, is there one I can remember? At least that's what I would do. Is there one I can remember? And I would probably cling to that one name. Is that something you are familiar with, or what would you do in that context again?
Well, I would say if I have run into that myself.
Yeah,
Yeah, which also, like you, I think that's a natural response.
yeah, yeah.
If I were meeting a group of people for the first time,
Mm,
I will, if someone says their name and maybe I didn't hear, I actually, in a group setting, I will say, oh, can you say that again, please?
yeah,
I
okay.
actually do, and
Yeah,
I do my best to concentrate and say it, repeat it to myself.
yeah,
But it's
yeah,
if I don't catch the name, then I'm feeling I'm not using that person's name as much, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
until I can go and follow up with them one on one.
Yeah, all right, absolutely. Well, thank you for being so vulnerable here today. I think this conversation it was really great in terms that we were able to talk about things that really happened to us personally, and we're discussing how we've dealt with them. So I think that's important, and we can use this in so many different contexts. I'm thinking of my listeners, professors in in the classroom, students in their classroom, those frontline staff who are encountering students that they might not know. They can understand that they are not alone. They're not in a place where everyone else knows what to do and they don't. But we're learning together. And I think this is a proverb that everybody knows. It says, it takes a village to raise a child, right? So we are listing the names of these child or children so people know who they are raising, and then who they're supporting in this context. So I'm really happy that I've had this opportunity to chat with you today. And I just want to remind our listeners again, you're under the Baobab tree with us, and we are discussing That's Not My Name. Over the past 2 days, I've traveled across campus to learn the strategies members of the MSVU community uses to help with pronouncing unique names. I've interviewed students, staff, and faculty alike, and everyone was asked to pronounce the same names. I'm happy to say that no one got them all right. But getting the names correct wasn't the exercise. The exercise was moreover focused on strategies, and as such, I can happily announce that we have come up with quite a number of strategies based on the participants' contribution to this podcast. Before I go on any further, I should extend a thank you to all of those who've participated. And for those who took a chance at writing the hoverboard as well. And I'll share this African proverb that says, "He who falls teaches others a lesson." And although no one fell off the hoverboard, many of you will learn today that the names that we pronounce or that we had in front of us were quite difficult. And some of you shared your experience at looking at these names and again pronouncing these names and how difficult they were. But in the end, you learned some strategies and how to do them. So let's treat that as a point where you fell, but now you have the opportunity to go on and teach others some strategies on how to communicate with those who are interacting with you in your office, in your classroom, wherever you are, what strategies you've used and what strategies others have used to communicate with those who have unique names. I can't tell you how many times I've mispronounced or misspelled someone's name. This podcast is meant to teach strategies, as I said earlier, and many of us used in the past to help with pronouncing these unique names. To our listeners, there will always be room under the Baobab tree for you to join as we explore those topics that affects our community, especially those of African ancestry. I'm your host, Randy Headley, for this podcast, That's Not My Name, thanking you for joining me throughout this journey